morning YouTube, and welcome back to my channel called Techademic, where I touch on a range of stuff based or related to what I do in my day job, which is being a full stack developer. I use technologies like React, Node.js, TypeScript, databases like Postgres, MySQL, or maybe even Google Firebase or Superbase or things like that. Today's video was something that I came up with when I was just searching for something on the internet, and I was like, how to do something using JavaScript or TypeScript or whatever. And I thought, let's see what Google's autocomplete gives us when we search for JavaScript How To. And to just show what I mean, if you go to a search window with Google and you say JavaScript, I've already typed that, and you say How To, there's some autocomplete entries that come up here. Things like how to call a function, how to disable a button, how to add to an array. This obviously changes a bit, so I took a screenshot of what it was at the time when I was preparing this video, and it was things like how to call a function, how to generate a random number, how to add to an array, how to convert a string to a number, etc. And I put these, I numbered them 1 to 10, and I decided, let's put that in a video and let's show you guys how to do these things. So obviously, as you can see, this is a bunch of very beginner or entry-level type questions, if I can call it that. And I'll try and break the video up into little segments so you can skip ahead to whatever it is you might want to see. But yeah, this is a very random type video. I'm open to doing more specific topics, so please let me know if there's something specific you want. There are some other videos in the pipeline, specifically related to things like Next.js with version 13 coming out. And let's do this. Let's see how to, for instance, call a function in JavaScript, or how to access an object property, or things like that. These are all basic things you need to be able to do in no particular order, but it's things you need to be able to do if you want to be a successful developer. So without further ado, let's get going. Right, so what we have here is an empty project. I'm on a Git branch called main. I'll link down in the description to the Git repository if you wanna view it later. It's already been created, so I'll just update as we go along, and I'll create a file for each one of these little questions that we'll work through. So the first one being how to call a function. So let's just create a new file. I'll call it 1, and then how to call a function.js for JavaScript. And we will, just to make sure everything's working, we say typical programmer style hello world. And the easiest way to run that is just type node and say 1 and press tab, so it auto completes, and you hit enter, and there we have it, hello world. Right, so we don't want to log to the, we want to log something to the console, but definitely not hello world. So there's two main ways that you can, there's one very main way that you can call a function, but then there's like a nice second way as well, and there's obviously way more some advanced ways, but we'll touch on two different ways to call a function. The first is using the function name, or the function's name, with parentheses, e.g. Let's say log to terminal, like that, and it will log something to terminal, and you can also maybe pass in something there. So what shall we do? Let's say we can add some numbers together. We create a function to add two numbers together. We call it add numbers. It takes in 2 arguments, a and b, and the only thing it should do is return a sum of those numbers. So let's say a plus b, as simple as that. This on its own will do nothing. If we do I save the file and I run it, you're not going to see anything written to the screen. Let's clear that. So what you can do is you can say add numbers, and then it will show you with some code hinting. It will show you what you can input there. This is just JavaScript, so there's no typing inferred. But let's say add number 10 and number 20. And yeah, that should work, right? So if I run this, no, still nothing. The thing is, this function actually outputs something. So we need to set it somewhere, or we need to log out what it's outputting. So the easiest way would be to say log whatever the function is doing, like that. There we go. 10 plus 20 is obviously 30. Another way would be to first set a variable like, let's just say sum equals add numbers, and let's make it 1 and 2 this time, which should total 3. And then instead of logging out add numbers directly, we say log out the sum. So that's like a more procedural way of doing it. And there we go. If we log it, we get 3. The second way, like I mentioned earlier on, is we can use an object method. So I'll just comment this out, or let's just leave it like that. So an object method is something like, so you create an object and then you have a method in the object. So let's create an object called person equals, and we give it some properties, something like first name, John, and last name, Doe. So we've got a person object, and we can log that out just so we know where we are. There you go. It's logged to the console, but it's still not doing anything. We're not calling a method or something like that. So what you need to do is to create a object method. So let's call this one full name, and we define it as a function using parentheses like that. And then we just open this curly braces, and then this function can do something. So let's say return, and we use a string interpolation. We say first name. I wonder if this is going to work. I'm referring to the word this. And we say last name. So the editor puts it in for me. Okay, right. If we log it now, is it going to work? No, it's not. It's just going to log out the object and tell me, listen, full name is a function. So we need to actually call that function. So now we can say, the same way you would access a property, if we say person.firstname and log that out, I should only get John. If I say person.fullname, if I log that out, I'm still going to get function full name like I did up here. But if I want to run it, same as with number 1 that we did up here, on line 1, I need to add the parentheses. So now if I run it, there we go, John Doe. And that is the two main ways that you can call a function. So obviously you can play around with this and make the full name function do a bit more. Perhaps we can even take in an argument. So we say age, and we tell this thing that John is 30 years old. And then we make the string a bit more interesting. Is age years old. There we go. John Doe is 30 years old. So that's a quick intro into how to call a function. It's something you'll do a lot. It's something you probably are already doing a lot. But let's move on to the next one. So the second item on our list is how to generate a random number. This is probably something you'll do a lot for different reasons, but it's a very handy thing to know how to do. So let's close the README and create a new file. So how to generate random number.js, and we'll do two versions of this. We'll say generate a single random number, and then secondly we'll generate an how shall we say, let's say 100 random numbers. Right, so generating random numbers is very handy, and in some of our later questions we'll actually reuse this functionality. But the easiest way to do it is to say, listen, create a constant of number and use the math utility from JavaScript, say random. Let's see what that gives us. before I finish this up. Let's say number. So now we say node, and we're running number 2. So we're getting a random number of that's a decimal number. So if you want this to be a number between, let's say, 1 and 10, you can multiply this by 10. It's still not going to give you exactly what you want. You're going to get 5 point something. And then you can decide whether you want to round it up or down to get a random number. So we're going to, if we want it to be 10, we need it to round it down. Otherwise, when we get to 10.3, for instance, and we say round it up, we're going to get 11, which means we're not getting a number between 1 and 10, but 1 and 11. So how do we get this decimal part to disappear? We just use the math utility again. And instead of just logging out the entire number, we say math.floor, and we put that number in there. And there we go. Now we get 5 or 1 or 7 or 0 or 8. A number between 0 and 10, essentially. Okay, I'm going to comment that one out. In fact, I'm going to comment that one out as well. And let's generate 100 different numbers. So for this, we're going to do a for loop. And you can type for let index equals 0. So where do we start? And then where do we stop? We say we stop at whenever the index is 100, less than 100. And we say index plus plus, so we iterate through it, all of them. And then inside this method, we say exactly what we did in number 1. We create a constant, let's call it x, or let's call it number, same as in 1, and we say math.random. And how many numbers do we want? Something between 1 and 100. So don't confuse these two. This one is telling me that this thing will iterate 100 times. What we're doing here is we're generating a random number between 0 and 100. So same as in number 1 above, console log, and we say math.floor, and we put the value of number in there. And if we run this now, there we go. We've got 100 random numbers. We're not doing any checks to see that they were already generated, so some of them might occur more than once. The odds are always against you. But yes, that's how you would generate a random number or a bunch of random numbers. Right, so number 3, how to add to an array. Arrays are something that you're going to use a lot when you're doing programming using JavaScript in any language. Actually, because yes, it's where you hold your data, it's how you iterate through data, things like that. So let's close the README, create a new file. How to add to an array.js. Right. So firstly, let's create an array. And we call it cars, and we add 2 types of cars in there. Let's say Toyota and Ford, and we just log this out. Console.log cars, show us the cars. So we say node number 3 and run that. So you've got Toyota and Ford. How would you add something to this array? It's actually very simple. JavaScript provides a function for you that you can call. You just say .push, and then what is it that you want to push in there? Now, in JavaScript, an array can hold a variety of objects, properties, sorry, not objects and properties, but a variety of different data types. There's nothing telling you you can only put strings in there. You can, I mean, okay, let's first put a string in there. So Toyota, Ford, and let's add Tesla as well. Let's see. There we go. Tesla is in there, but we can also do cars.push and add a number 10 in there, and what you'll get is an array with different data types in there. TypeScript is a bit more strict about this, but we are talking purely JavaScript at this stage, so let's just stick to that. So I mean, that actually answers question number 3, and we can move on to 4 from here, but let's do something interesting with this. Let's build an array of numbers, and let's build a random number generator to populate that array. So we can build, let's say, a lotto card number picker, something like that. Okay, so I'm gonna just comment this out, all of it. Pressed the wrong button there. All right. And let's build a lottery number picker. I mean, because all of you have trouble picking your numbers, right? So first, let's create some constants. We say const number count. So how many numbers should you put on your ticket? In our case, in South Africa, that would be 6. And then what's the maximum number that any one of these numbers can be? So let's say number max. In our case, again, this is 49, if I'm not mistaken. And then we need to put these numbers somewhere when we generated them. So same as above, where the code that I commented out, let's create an array and we call it lotto numbers, and it's an empty array when we start. Right, so if we console.log lotto numbers right now, it should be empty. There we go. Let's clear the output down here. Okay, so the easiest way to do this is to use a while loop. So while something is not true, keep doing this until it's true. So you say while the lotto numbers array has a length that is smaller or equal to the number count. So while we are, while the numbers stay that, in other words, while the length of this array is smaller than what we want, keep doing this loop. So the last time it will run is whenever it is equal to that length, right? So in this case, 6. So the 6th iteration will be the last one. Right. So what we can do then is generate a random number again, like in number 2. You can revisit that part of the video. So I'm just going to call it, let's use a shorter variable. We call it x equals math.floor. And inside math.floor, we can say math.random times, and remember here you need to say like the maximum value that you could have, so it's between 0 and whatever you have your max, and ours is a variable that we defined, which is called number max. And then we need to say if this number is not 0, because 0 is not a valid lotto number, right? So we say if x is equal to, not equal to 0, then we just push it to the array. So now if we run the same thing, there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's one too many. We need to change that to not have an equal there. There we have it. 6 numbers and then there. But what we're not checking for though is whether we're adding a number that we might have added before. So I think if you run this enough, you'll get to a point where a number repeats itself. I'm not seeing one at the moment. 36, 38, 39. But trust me, if you run this enough, at some point you're going to add a number more than once that's the same number. So we need to double check that that's not happening. And to do that, we can change this condition to include another condition, which is if lotto numbers has an index of, so index of checks the lotto array for a specific value. So we're checking, does it already contain x? If that is true, it's not good. So as long as it's false, and whenever that is evaluates to false, it will, so you can read the documentation there. It says returns the index of the first occurrence of a value in an array, or -1 if it's not present. We want that to be true. We want it to not be present in order to put it in the array, or it should not be 0. Right, so now if we run it again, we should see similar output, but we can be guaranteed that we won't have the same number in our array twice. So happy number picking, and we can move on to the next one. So number 4, we are still with arrays. We're still working with arrays here, and we want to know how to remove an item from an array. So up to now, we've only been adding items to an array and then logging it out. But what if we want to remove something? So again, let's create a new file. And I'll just say how to remove from array. Apologies for the long names, but I want it to be as explanatory as possible. And let's create an array again of cars like we did in number 2. This time let's say Merc, or let's put it out like in full, and Toyota, and what else? Ford, and we can add another one. Let's say Volkswagen. Right, if we just log that out again, just to see what we have. We say node for, right, so we're logging that out. And I'm actually going to add something else to this log. We say, and we call it before. Before modifying the, wow, my typing is horrible this morning, the array. Right, so that's something you can also do, so you can put multiple values in your console log. Right. Now let's remove something. So the easiest way is to, let's say you want to remove the first element from the array. I'm actually going to log that out. Remove the, or comment that first element. To do that, you just say cars dot shift. It's a built-in method. And let's put this at the bottom here, and we say after modifying the array. There we can see Mercedes was in the first one before modifying the array, and it's gone in the second one. Let's say you want to remove the last element. Let's just comment that back out. And we say remove the last element from an array. And we say cars dot pop. So you just pop it off the back. This is actually the same name you see in a lot of other languages as well, or same function name. Right, so let's run it again. So we now expect Volkswagen to disappear. And there you have it, Volkswagen is gone. But let's say you want to remove a specific one. In this case, we want to remove Toyota. So remove a specific element from an array. And I'll just say Toyota in this case. Then you can use a method called splice. Don't confuse this with slice. That's something different. That doesn't change the array. It just returns some elements from a specific array. So splice says start number. At what point in the array do you want to start? Right. So we remember arrays are zero based. They just start counting at 0. So that would be element 0, 1, 2, 3. So we want to remove element 1, which is Toyota. And how many elements do we want to remove? Again, we just want to remove 1. So we expect if we run this for the Toyota to disappear. And there you go. And as you can see, you can actually remove more than that. So let's say we want to just leave Mercedes there and remove the other 3. Just change that to 3 and run it again. And Mercedes would be all that's left. And that's how you remove items from an array. Right, so what's up next? Number 5, how to convert a string to a number. Right, this is a nice one. Let's create a new file. 5, how to convert string to a number.js. Right. So we need to start with something. Let's say const start number equals, and let's make it something like 12.5. Remember, we want to convert a string. If this was a number, it would have been just like that. Sorry, just like that. But we want it to be a string that we can convert. I'm going to just show that programmatically as well. So let's log out before conversion. And we say type of, which is a built-in function in JavaScript, and start number. So if we say node, number 5, and autocomplete, before conversion of string, type of, so it's before conversion, and the type of is string, right? Maybe I should add an arrow there so we can better determine that it's a different sentence. There we go. Before conversion, it's a string. Okay, so the first and easiest way to change a number or a string into a number would be to say const converted, and I'm setting this to a variable just because we're going to do a bunch of them. You could actually do it in line in your console log if you want to. Converted number equals, and here we can use another built-in function from JavaScript called number, and put in start number there. And then we say console dot log after conversion, Let's add a little arrow again. And we say type of converted number. And let's actually log out the number as well. So we say start number and converted number. And if we run this now, you can see the color is a bit different. So the way that Node writes out strings and numbers, the strings is just the normal same color, and then a number is written in my case in yellow. It depends on your command line settings and so on. But the important part is before conversion, the type is string, and after conversion, the type is number. So we successfully did that. Let's use another way to do this. In fact, I'm going to change this to be like that, and we say let converted number. Just leave it undefined. And that way, I mean, if you run something, we change the value. Nothing should be different for now. Okay, let's do method number 2, which is to use a built-in function called parseInt. Converted number equals parseInt, and then we give it the number that we want to convert. Let's run this again. Before conversion, it's a string. After conversion is a number, but look at this. The 12.5 becomes a 12, and that could be a problem for you. I mean, you don't always want your decimals to get lost. Sometimes you do, which is where you would use a function like this. But other times, you don't want that to happen. So then you use parse float. Converted number equals parse float. And you can say start number. Let's run that again. There we go. We've converted the string to a number, and the value stays the same. So now you can do maths with this, and add or subtract or things like that. Important to note that in JavaScript specifically, you could probably have taken that and done some maths with it. So let's test that out. I'm actually going to comment everything out, everything but start number. We can put it back in just now. But if you say console.log start number, which is a string in this case, -10, it should theoretically still work. Here you go. It converts it to a number, does the math, and gives you 2.5. Depending on how you've got your environment set up, that might not be possible. If you've got strict enabled, or if you're using TypeScript, you won't be that lucky. So it's better to do it the correct way, which is like I've just shown you. But something that I don't know whether you picked that up when we were doing this conversion is there's actually another parameter here when you use the parseInt. So if I say comma there, and it shows me, it gives me what you call a radix. So that tells me what numbering system I should be using. So common numbering system, maybe it's best if I paste something here so I can show you. Let's call it common numbering systems. And I'm not going to explain them in detail, but you should have heard of these by now. Binary, which only has 0 or 1, so something's either on or off, true or false, something like that. Then you've got the decimal system. This is what we as humans use to count everything in our lives, money, how much fuel you have in your tank, all that kind of stuff. And then hexadecimal, which is a super, it's got 16 numbers, and I'm showing quotes here with my fingers now, but 16 different numbers being 0 to F. And common uses of this would be something like HTML colors, or something like FF00EE. That's an HTML color. And we could probably do an example of how you convert a number like that into a normal RGB number, which is from 0 to 255. So if I say converted number, comma 10 here, I'm just using the normal decimal system, and that number will be converted to something in the decimal system. So let's do that. It should still remain the same. So 12.5 becomes 12 because we're using int and not float. If you ever change that to use the radix of 2, in other words, you've got 2 numbers to work with, the number is just 1. that's a bit confusing, and to be honest, I'm not going to go into why that's working or not working. What we will do, however, is, and I'll comment this all out. Maybe let's put this in a block comment, so it's a bit easier when you grab this from the Git repository, and then we can take all of this out as well. So let's write something that converts an HTML color into a normal readable, not normal readable, but in an RGB value, something like 255 and 173 and so on. So if you're not sure what I mean, let's open a color picker. So HTML color picker, I think Google actually has one built in. So down here, let's say I pick, I don't know, that color over there, which is a form of red. So that's the HTML code. F21B0C, that converts into an RGB value like that. So let's use this exact one so we can check our answer and see that we get the right thing. So that's the color we're trying to convert. We need three values. We need a R from RGB, and we say parse int. And what's the first two values here? So remember, an hexadecimal color code is the first two values is R, the next two values for red, the next two is G for green, and then blue is the last ones. So RGB will take F2, and this is, remember, this is now in the hexadecimal system. There's 16 of them over there. Right, and then const rg parse int, and then in this case it should be 1b. Again, this is in the hexadecimal system, and then const rgb for blue, parse int, and 0c in this case, and then again this is in the hexadecimal system. So if we console log this, and I'm going to use a string here, string interpolation, and we do that. We say R, and we add a comma, and we say G, another comma, sorry, that should be a $, and a B. If we run this, 242.27.12, 242.27.12. So now you know how this color picker does the conversion that you are used to. So now I remember actually why decimal 2 didn't work earlier on. Sorry, not decimal 2, a radix of 2. So if you say console log, and I'm actually just going to do it in line. If you say parse int, and you give it a string, let's say 10, and you say in what format is that? That's what the next one is for. What format is the input so that I can convert it into an integer? So if I have a 10, so 0 is just 0. If you have a 1, it's 1. If you have a 10, it should be the value of 2. If I'm not mistaken. There we go. And then if you 010 should be a different value again. Sorry, it's the same one. 011. 011 should be a different, should be 1, and now that should be 4 if I'm not mistaken. 5, sorry, because it should have been a 0 there if I wanted 4, etc. I'm not an expert in binary, but I mean that's essentially what you with parse int. This is the input value. This is the format that it's in. Convert it to an integer for me. Parse float would do the same thing. So yes, that is how to convert a string to a number. It took way longer than it should have, but there we go. Okay, up next, how to print in JavaScript. So this is a bit, how shall I say it? It's not technically possible to go and modify what you're printing in JavaScript, but what you can do is, at least call the print dialog. So in this case, we're not going to create a JS file. We are going to create a HTML file called how to print. And it's an HTML file. And if you just start typing HTML without the braces, I think, just press enter. Now you've got a nice little, what do you call it, a template that you can work with here. Let's give it a title of print me. And let's add a button in here, or first a piece of text. We say, click the following button to launch the print window. And we can add a button on, and we give it an on click. On can't play. Wow. On click. And this is where the JavaScript comes in. Window dot print, which is a function from the window object, and we just say print this page. So I need to go find this in my Finder, which is on a different window here, and open it. There we go. So this is the page, just so we can be sure. Let's change this to please, so you can actually see it appear in the back end or in the background. Let's refresh it. Please click the following button to launch the print window. Print this page. There you go. So that's how you can like get started with printing. You can't really modify anything else from JavaScript, but it's a good start. And that is it. Next up, number 7, how to access an object property. Oh, this is a nice and quick one. So it's a new file, 7, how to access object property.js. And let's create an object first. Let's use the person one we did earlier. So we say first name equals John. Last, sorry, not equals, that's wrong. This should be a colon. Last name equals Doe, and let's add an age in here as well. Right, so we've got that person, console.log, and we can say person. All right, so let's say node, and we're running number 7. There we go. That's the entire object, but let's say you only want to get the last name. There's 2 different ways to do this. So last name method 1 is console.log, and I'm just going to put last name as what is it that we're writing out. So you can say last name is person, and then you use square brackets like you would access an array or something like that when you would say like object or property 0 or whatever. So for person, you can say give me his last name. You can see there was some autocomplete there done for you. So if we run this, we still get that line logged out for us. I can comment that out. Last name is Doe. But what's method number 2 then? And this is a bit simpler in this case. Method 2 is console.log last name, and we say person, and just hit the dot. Autocomplete will pick up what the properties are if it's a simple object. If it's a more complex object, it's not going to always be able to do that, but in this case it can because it's a simple object. You can just say last name, save it, and the output would be exactly the same. There you go. Up next, how to iterate through an object. Okay, so this is getting a little bit more advanced. Well, not advanced yet, but it's not beginner anymore. You're touching on the intermediate level here now. So let's create a new file. 8, and we say how to iterate an object.js. Right, so we need an object to work with. I'm just going to copy the one we just used. So that person. All right. And if we console log person, I mean, we already know what we're going to get, but I just want to refresh. So we say node, and we're running file number 8 tab. There we go. First name John, last name Doe, age 30. So let's say you're working in something like a React or a I don't know, that you're using some templating system where you've got an object with a bunch of these that you need to iterate through so you can do something with it, you know, write out some HTML or whatever. The first and most common way that would always work, never mind what browser you're in or what version of JavaScript you're using. I'm talking about main versions now, not the one from 2002. Although that could probably also work. All of them should work if you do it in this way. So short and sweet, you say, I'm going to comment this out. Use a for loop, and you say for each const key. Now key being, that's a key, that's a value. For each key in person, do something. So for each one that you find in the person object, do something. In our case, we're just going to say console log. And I'm going to use a string interpolation, and let's just log out the key here. So if we run this now, and I say first name, last name, age. So that's great, but now you're iterating through it, but you're not actually getting the value, you're just getting the keys. Remember what we did in number 7 in the previous video? You can actually access an object attribute or property using the key. So we can say take the let's put it in that again, and we say take person and use the square braces and take that same key then and write out the value for that thing. So you're saying take person, give me whatever the key is at that point. It can be first name, last name, age, and then give me the value to the right of the arrow. So there we go. First name John, last name Doe, age 30. Perfect, exactly what we expected. So that's number 1. This works in most versions of JS. I'm going to comment it out. Option 2, and this was introduced with ES6. So introduced in ES6, but you know, people started using objects a lot more, so needed better methods for it. So here you need to do a bunch of things. First, you need to get all the keys. Let's get all the keys for our object. So the keys, and you use an object, what do you call this? An object interface from JavaScript, and you say, give me all the keys for a specific object. So let's just log this out so you can see what it does. Console.log keys. Here you go. It gives you an array of keys. So now this thing becomes iterable. So just what does iterable mean? It means that you can iterate through these. They're numbered. You can go, you know, entry 0 is this, entry 1 is that, entry 2 is that. You can't do that with the object itself. If you try and say console.log person sorry, console log is not a good idea. Let's say for each person.for each, and you console log the element, you're going to get some errors because that thing is not iterable. So first you need to make it iterable. Right, so we get the keys. The next thing we do is we get the values. So const values equals object dot values for the person's object, console.log values. Right. So there we have them. There's many ways that now you can tie them together. You can say entry 0 will be first name, so entry 0 year will be first name, entry 1 will be last name, entry 1 year will be Doe. But the easiest way to do it is to say keys, take each of these keys and do for each. So for each one of them do something. That's the key value. And now you can do the same that we did above here. I'm just actually going to copy it. And you get the exact same output because for each one of these keys, you can use it as an accessor to the person object. So while this was introduced in ES6, I don't think it's exactly what it was added for, because clearly this way is still faster. But there's more ways to skin the same cat. Number 3, introduced in ES8. So here you can say, give me all the entries for a specific thing. So you can say const entries equals person. Sorry, use the object interface again. You say dot entries, and let's take person. And what this will give you is a multi-dimensional array. So if you just log it out at the moment, you're going to get an array of arrays. So the first element in the array is first name John, second element last name Doe. So you can clearly see where this is going already. Now we can just do a for loop on it. We say for, and you can destructure the array. So we say for the key and the value of, and we're not looking at person anymore. We're now looking at this entries that we already converted. We just log out the key value. So we say console log. I'm actually going to copy this again, but just modify it a little. Instead of using that way to access it, we just say value. There we go, same output. I mean, this might be confusing it a little, so let's take comment that out, and we clear the terminal, and we just run it again. First name John, last name Doe, and his age is 30. Personally, I would use this method because you can even shorten it a bit more. You don't have to use these many lines. You can change that to read like that and comment it out. And I think it's a bit clearer what it does than what we did in number 1. I think it's up to personal preference, and obviously you would use number 1 if you want as much compatibility as possible, you know, even work in Internet Explorer 6 and things like that. But yes, that's how you iterate an object. Up next, how to reverse a string. This is something you will 99% of the time get it as an interview question, so be sure you know how to do it. And the right answer is this one. There's many ways to skin the same cat, but this is the easiest way to do this in JavaScript, and it's what they're looking for in the interview. When I mean, you can technically iterate using a for loop and things like that, but the correct ways that they're looking for is normally this one. I say normally because everyone has a different idea, but yeah. How to reverse a string. Right, so let's first create a string. Let's call it test string equals greetings from Cape Town. For those that don't know, I'm recording this in Cape Town, South Africa. Right, so how do you do this? You use array function. We've been focusing on arrays for a few of these now. So let's say use array functions. First thing you do is you split the string into an array, right? So element 0 will be G, element 1 will be R, etc. So you say the split string. So a string object has built-in functions, not first name test string. So if you hit the dot there, you've got a bunch of functions that you can do on the string, and one of them is split. And you can say split it on something like, let's say, the space. So if I say space, it's going to give me greetings as the first element, from as the second element. Let me show you that. Console.log split string, right? And we say node 9. Greetings from Cape Town. You've got 4 elements, but I don't want to split on the spaces. I want to reverse the entire string. If we do it this way, we're just going to actually reverse the words. So if I want to split the entire string, you just don't add anything between the parentheses, between the quotes, sorry. So if we do it now we've got an array of all the characters, including the spaces, right? The next thing we do is we reverse it. So we take this array and we reverse it. Reverse array equals whatever the split string value above is, dot reverse. That's a built-in function for arrays. So let's just log that out so you can see what happens. You can see greetings is now from the bottom up. And the last thing is then to combine it back into a string. So you say const, let's call this reverse string equals split string. Sorry, not split string, reverse string. String. Sorry, it's reverse array. Apologies. Dot join. So the opposite of split is join. And how do we want to join it? Do we want to put anything in between? I'm going to show you what I mean just now, but for now we're not putting anything in between. Sorry, I'm logging out the wrong value. And there you can see Cape Town, well, it's down, Cape, from, greetings, but in reverse. So there we reverse the string. So what did I mean with join with commas or something? You can put any character in here and that will be added in between the values in the array above. So let's say we put in a dash and we run it. That's what you're going to get, which is also something I need to know. The split and the join methods are very handy when you're doing development. So that is how you would reverse a string. Right, so last but not least, how to concatenate strings. This is something I'm 99% sure you already know how to do, but it came up in Google, so let's do it. How to concatenate strings.js. So what do we mean with concatenation? It's essentially adding strings together, and this is not in a math way, but more like a display way. So let's say you've got two strings, const str1, and we say hello, and const str2 world. Sorry, we need to put that in quotes. If you want to concatenate that, you can just say str1 plus str2. If we do a node and we run number 10, hello world. As you can see, there's not a space in there because neither of these strings actually contain a space. If you want to add a space in there, you can do it like that. That's a valid string. That's a valid string. That's a valid string. If you add them all together, you get hello space world. There is a different way to write the same thing though. If we say console.log and you use backticks, not normal quotes, and then you can do what we call string interpolation. So then you say dollar and curly braces str1, and you can just type as normal here. You can put any string in there, and then you say dollar curly braces str2, and you're going to get that written out like that. I prefer this way in 99% of the cases. It also caters for things like multi-line. So if you want to add line breaks in there, you also get those. That's very handy when you're writing things like SQL statements in your code and so on, and you want it to look, pretty and work as expected. Another way to concatenate strings, I haven't personally used this much, but it's definitely an option, is to say create a new string. So we say const str3 equals str1, which is the hello above, dot concat. And what I want to concat it with, I want to concat it with str2. So if we log that out, sorry, I'm going to comment this and console.log str3. And we're back where we started. So yeah, you can actually add more of them in there. So if you wanted the space before str2, you can do it like that. I don't know, some people prefer doing str.concat. Like I said, I very rarely use this. Imagine you had to write out a whole sentence like this, and I'm actually going to copy paste this because it's just ridiculous. We'll call this concat3, and you take a string value, you can do it like that as well, dot concat, and you need to add a space and then do and a space and then is, it's a nightmare. Imagine doing that with a string interpolation. It's just going to be so much simpler. So I'll leave this there so you can reference it. But I think the easiest way in this case is either that line or that line. So with that, we wrap up this list of how-to questions from Google. I mean, this was a random video just to do something for a change. Like I said, I'm working on some bigger projects and they take a bit longer to record and edit. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that one, and I hope I'll see you back here for more. Please remember to like and subscribe down below. Share with your friends that you think might find this helpful. And just as a closing remark, I did push all of this up to Git, so you can go and look at the code there. There's the link in the URL bar there, but I'll also put it down in the description. And I really do hope to see you back here again. So have yourself a good day and stay safe.